Welcome to The Explainer. Today we're digging into a transcript that lays out this really radical vision for the future of money. It's a vision that claims we are standing at a turning point, one that's just as big as, say, the founding of a new world.
And it all starts with this one powerful quote. Think about it. We have landed not on Plymouth Rock, but on Plymouth Block. This is the central idea, the key metaphor for everything that follows. So, what does it mean? Well, just like the Pilgrims landed on Plymouth Rock to start a brand new society, the argument here is that a whole new generation is landing on the Plymouth Block, the Bitcoin blockchain, to build an entirely new financial world from scratch.
All right, so to really get a handle on this revolution that's being proposed, we first have to understand the problem they're trying to solve. And the source, well, it doesn't pull any punches when it describes our current financial system. And here it is, laid out plain and simple. Centralized banking is the Dark Ages. Now that is a bold, provocative statement, right? The argument in this transcript is that the last 100 years or so, the era of central banks like the Federal Reserve, well, it wasn't progress. No, not at all. It's framed as a dark age, a time of total centralized control over our money, and really our economic freedom.
And to really drive this point home, the source shows us this pretty stark comparison. On one hand, you have the 1860s, a time when America apparently had something like 7,000 different private decentralized currencies. 7,000! And then you have today, one official currency, all of it controlled by one central authority. The whole idea here is that we went from this massively decentralized system to a super centralized one. And the argument is that whole process is about to go into reverse.
Okay, so if centralized banking is the dark age, the big problem, then what's the solution? How do we get out of it? Well, according to this transcript, the answer, the engine of this whole revolution, is Bitcoin mining.
Now, we got to be clear what mining means in this context. It's not just some nerdy technical thing about computers solving puzzles. No, it's framed as something much, much bigger. It's the decentralized production of a totally new form of money, money that is born completely independent of any central bank or government.
And here's the economic powerhouse behind the whole argument. Let's look at these numbers, just as an example. The source claims you can produce one Bitcoin for a cost of, say, $47,000. But its potential market value? Over $100,000. You see the gap there? The whole point being made is that mining is essentially creating an asset for, like, half of what it's worth on the open market. It's a pretty compelling economic case.
And this all builds to what is really the most audacious claim in the entire transcript. The mining company replaces the Federal Reserve System. You own the money printer. I mean, let that sink in. The argument is that anyone who gets into mining is basically becoming their own central bank. They're taking control of the creation of money itself. And in doing so, they are directly challenging the monopoly that institutions like the Fed have held for a century.
But, okay, it's not just about creating a new money printer. The transcript goes deeper. It asks a really important question: who should own this thing? And it lays out two totally different philosophies on how this should work.
So you've got two paths here. On the one side, there's the corporate model, the usual suspects. It gets offered up on Wall Street to, as the source puts it, nice rich people. Ownership and profits stay concentrated at the top. But then there's this other idea, the patriot model. This one is all about getting ownership into the hands of everyday people, with the huge goal of actually decentralizing wealth and, quote, making the American people wealthy again.
And this isn't just some vague idea. It's presented as a clear three-step game plan. Step 1, launch these mining companies with private investors. Step 2, put the ownership of those companies directly into the hands of the American people. And Step 3, well, that's the big one. The whole point is to shift real economic power away from Washington, D.C. and spread it all across the country.
Now, you might be thinking, this sounds great, but is it even possible? Well, the transcript argues that yes, it is, and it points to some real-world stuff that's already happening. We're talking about tax credits that let you write off the equipment, government grants for building data centers, even potential energy partnerships with states like Alaska. The idea is that the groundwork, the political and economic support for this vision, is already being laid.
So to help us wrap our heads around just how big of a shift this could be, the source pulls out a really powerful historical parallel. It compares what's happening now to one of the most important economic developments in all of human history.
And that parallel is the Silk Road.
The argument goes like this. If you want to understand the true potential of Bitcoin, you have to look at the massive impact gold had on ancient trade. The claim is that Bitcoin is about to do for our digital world what gold did for the ancient world.
Let's just walk through this evolution. In ancient times, you had the barter system. Super inefficient, right? You had to trade your chickens directly for someone's cloth. Then, along comes gold. Suddenly, you have a universal standard of value, a common language for trade that just explodes global commerce. And so, the argument is, we're at that moment again. We're moving into the digital age, and Bitcoin is positioned to become that new universal layer for global exchange.
And this is where it all ties together. The source claims that it was this shift to a gold standard that literally brought us out of the, quote, dark ages. It sparked a global renaissance, and so a direct line is drawn from that moment in history to right now, with the suggestion that as the world starts to agree on Bitcoin, a similar kind of global flourishing is just around the corner.
Okay, so let's get back to Plymouth Block. What does this new world, this new economy that's built on this foundation, what does it actually look like day to day? What are we talking about here, really?
Well, a vision that's laid out is one of just radical decentralization. I mean, imagine a world where big companies like Walmart or Costco could issue their own currencies. Or think about your reward points, your airline miles, your credit card points. What if those became actual tradable tokens that you could swap on an open market? In this future, all of these different private currencies are flying around, and Bitcoin sits at the very bottom of it all, serving as the base layer, the ultimate reserve asset. Kind of like digital gold. The source also points to something it claims is happening right now, kind of behind the curtain. It describes this dynamic where, during price dips, you get retail investors, what it calls weak hands, who panic and sell. But at the exact same time, it alleges that the wealthy elites are using advanced tools, even AI, to do the opposite. They're buying up huge amounts of Bitcoin, accumulating it while everyone else is scared.
And really, the whole narrative comes to a close with this incredibly powerful image. It frames everyone who's participating in this new system, whether you're a miner or an investor, as something more than just a market player. No, you're a settler, a pioneer. You are one of the people building a future global economy.
And so, in the end, the transcript leaves us with this massive, thought-provoking question. According to this vision, what actually happens to the world, to our economy, when the power to create money isn't in the hands of a few central institutions anymore, but is instead in the hands of everyone? What does that world really look like? And what does it mean for you and me? That's the fundamental question at the heart of this entire idea.